Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we're going to be discussing the continuation of the severe weather outbreak as it heads into the stronger stages of the event today. That could include strong tornadoes, large hail, and really gusty winds. But before it gets started, I would like to ask you all to do me a favor. Hit the like button down below so that helps me out with YouTube's algorithm. Subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications so that you do not miss anything that I upload, including the chance for, actually, I shouldn't say chance because I am 100% going to be live streaming today with our Storm Chaser again. Yesterday we had a live streamer, well, not a live streamer, we had a Storm Chaser that chased near the town of Lubbock, or the city of Lubbock in Texas, and we actually caught a tornado live on stream. If you want to see that, the link will be in the description down below so that you can see, and there's timestamps in the description of that video, so if you want to see the funnel clouds as well as the tornado on the ground live on stream, you can be able to do so. So turn on notifications if you haven't already. The live stream will most likely be around 1:30 Central Standard Time, mainly because that's going to be around the time in which I'll get home from work. I've actually made it so that I actually get home from work early so that I will be able to inform you all as to what all could be happening, as well as showing you live footage from our Storm Chaser. As well as one last thing, share this video with friends and family so that this is more of, they know what the event is and more of an in-depth taste. If you know anyone who lives in these areas, they for sure would like to know what exactly is happening in their general vicinity. So share this video on social media with them so that they may be able to be informed. With that being said, let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center. And today, this is the day one outlook, and the enhanced is still there. So the enhanced risk actually has been extended a bit further west, and it actually includes places like Amarillo. So it's a little bit out of the reach of Lubbock, but Amarillo actually is inside the enhanced risk here. So that's something to keep in mind too. And then day two, there's actually a slight risk in the Mississippi River Valley. So the threat for severe storms continues even into tomorrow. Most likely will not be as strong as what it's supposed to be today, or even on par with what happened on Friday. But you still have the chance for severe storms on day two. Just to real quickly tell you all what the probs are. There's no probability for hail at the moment. There's a 15% chance for wind over 58 miles per hour or above. And then you also have your 5% chance for tornadoes there. Day three, there's nothing. Day four, there actually is nothing as well. But day five, this is Wednesday. So Wednesday, there is a large threat for severe weather that could be haunting Dixie Alley next week. So something to keep in mind there, that severe weather may continue to stick around even after this event and push off a little bit further towards the deep south. Let's go a bit more in depth here as to what exactly we could be seeing with our severe weather outbreak today. I mentioned before that we could have some strong tornadoes, and indeed we could. But let's get into the hail aspect. You can see you have a red circle here that indicates a 30% chance of you seeing hail over 1 inch. And the thing about this 30% right here is that you actually also have another black circle with some dotted lines inside of it. And what that means is that there actually is a hatched risk, as the Storm Prediction Center likes to call it. So this hatched risk indicates that you have a 10% chance or greater probability of you seeing not 1 inch, but 2-inch size hail and above. 2 inches. That is really large. We had some hail size yesterdays. That is a meme. Hail size yesterday that actually exceeded over 2 and 3 inches. So, you know, I really would not be surprised if we had some hail sizes over 2 inches with some of these storms, because of how the profiles with these supercells could be that robust and could be creating that much energy and sucking off that much energy from the atmosphere. Wind is still 15%, so 15% chance for you seeing damaging thunderstorm winds or wind gusts above 58 miles per hour. And then the brown is just a 5%. And this is the next frame right here. We're going to be taking a look at the tornado risk, which is the reason why I say we could be having some strong tornadoes. You can see the 10% risk right here indicated in yellow. There's a 5% risk that is indicated in brown that extends a bit farther north than the Texas Panhandle and a bit further south, heading into the general vicinity, not exactly towards San Angelo, but it's I can't remember what towns are over in Texas, but regardless, actually we might as well. Abilene's actually in the 5%, so that's something to keep in mind, that there's actually a decent risk for you over there. So something to keep in mind, that Abilene's right on the edge of the 5% risk, and anything north of Abilene, near Woodward, Oklahoma, down south into Amarillo, and even further west, east into places like Stockton. You guys need to go ahead and monitor the National Weather Service and Storm Prediction Center extensively, because not only do you have a 10% chance for tornadoes, but you also have that pesky hatch risk again. You can see the black circle with the dotted lines inside the yellow circle, and what the hatch risk means for tornadoes, or the tornadic risk, is you actually have a 10% chance or greater probability of you seeing EF2 to EF5 tornadoes, meaning that you could see strong tornadoes within a certain spot in that area. And that is something that we would never like to see, but regardless, we are here to inform that that is exactly the case, and that there could be very strong tornadoes within this within these set of supercells. And just, if you think that I'm overhyping it, you're thinking, oh, you're using too strong of a wording, I will read you a text from the Storm Prediction Center, which, by the way, is a group of meteorologists that are designated to inform the general public about severe weather in general. So let's just read real quickly. Quote, scattered severe thunderstorms are expected across the Oklahoma and Texas panhandles, northwest Texas, and western Oklahoma on Saturday, with the greatest threat expected from mid-afternoon into early evening. A few tornadoes, some possibly strong, and very large hail will be the primary hazards, with damaging wind gusts possible as well. So they have used the wording, a few tornadoes, comma, some possibly strong. We haven't seen that in about a year. So something to keep in mind, that they are extensively looking at this event, and that they are acknowledging that there could possibly be some strong tornadoes in this event. Let's take a look at the HRRR. Let's take a look at the latest model here for the HRRR. This is a hourly model, so this will be able to accurately determine the timing as well as the conditions around the event. So we'll take a look at the timing first, and you can see as it continues to move on through, this is Saturday morning, moving into the afternoon hours. You can see the low pressure system actually start to form off into the north and the northeastern part of New Mexico, and how it creates a lot of snow and freezing rain into parts of Colorado near the Rockies. So that's something to keep in mind too, that even if you're not in a severe weather risk, you could be in danger of some winter weather. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone wants winter weather to go away by now and just officially move into severe weather season. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, that there's still the chance for some snow into parts of the Rockies. But then as it continues to move on through, this is around noon for you guys, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock here, this is where thunderstorms start to initiate, and this is 2 o'clock Central Standard Time, because I live over in the East Coast. But 2 o'clock Central Standard Time, thunderstorms begin to develop. There's one line out in front near Amarillo. There is another line out to the west of Amarillo, and as that continues to move on through, the first line kind of dissipates, but the second line, you can see how there's so many of these little dots here that are kind of separate from each other. And what that tells us is there could possibly be some discrete storms that could form on its own and be able to possibly be unimpeded by any of its counterparts. So something to keep in mind there, that if there is moisture in here and that it could seep into some of these supercells who aren't going to be fighting with each other, there could be the chance for some long-lived supercells that, as I mentioned, could place down tornadoes and produce some large hail. Moving on later on into the evening, this would be around, say, 7 o'clock-ish, maybe 6 o'clock-ish, and if we take a look and continue this way, it turns a bit more into a gusty wind threat. This is around 7 o'clock, so gusty wind threat with linear mode, except there are some instances to where some of these storms along the line actually are a bit more discrete. So you can see how the there's that dotted component here indicating that there could be some discrete cells along the line moving through as well. So there may be two different risks. You can have your supercells that are out in front of the line, and then you can have your line of storms that can produce these brief embedded rotations that could also produce tornadoes. So something to keep in mind with that. And then as it continues to push on through, it'll head into the Oklahoma vicinity. The broken line, will move over into that vicinity at around 10 to 11 o'clock, maybe even 9 o'clock. It's kind of stretching it, but that's right around that vicinity to where those thunderstorms will be moving into your general vicinity. Let's take a look at some of the components here. We'll actually go to the temperature first, show you all the temperatures in this general vicinity, and we'll just zoom on through here. So here's the afternoon hours, and look at this. Some temperatures actually get up to the 80s, so that's something to keep in mind. And this actually, look at this. Some temperatures actually get into the 70s. Actually, if I were to designate like a hot zone or something like that, I did have it on my graphics before, but I'm like testing out my graphics still, so I don't know exactly where that is at the moment. However, if I were to have a hot zone in place, it would be right along this area right here, to where you could see some strong tornadoes, and they could be long track violent supercells that could produce some large amounts of hail. But you can see for sure that it gets up into the 70s, the temperatures at least, so it is relatively warm over there, and that it will continue to stay warm all the way into the overnight hours. So temperatures stay into the low 70s, maybe even 80s in some spots. Anywhere further north, like near Amarillo, is in the 60s. But, you know, doesn't really matter all too much if you have the moisture to compensate. So that's something to keep in mind with that. Dew points. Dew point is going to be a factor here. 100%. You can see how some of the areas here, the dew points actually get up into the 60s, actually mid 60s in some spots, which actually is pretty good for this time of year. Usually you would want above 60 dew points in order for you to consider thunderstorms in general, especially tornadic thunderstorms. So the fact that it is the mid 60s it may not seem like a big jump, but it actually is. So the fact that there is low to mid 60 dew points, it's actually above 60 in general, tells me that this event is still going strong, and that there is still a nice little event right that could possibly be happening right within my hot zone. So right around here, which would be just to the south and east of Amarillo, probably the place like near Stockton or something like that, you guys could be expecting the worst, in my opinion, from this storm. And then let's take a look at the conditional threat here, see what exactly we are booking and cooking here with the models, so that I can be able to determine what all is happening around here. Alright, so this is the surface-based supercell composite. We'll take a look at one at around 21Z, which is around quick maths, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, You can see dew points do get to around the 61-degree mark here. I'll circle that. And it also gets the regular temperature up to the 65-degree mark. Now, you guys also may be looking at this thing and being like, Nate, you lost me. All right, that's it. This thing's a bit too complex for me. Just get on with it. Tell me if there's tornadoes or not. No. Believe me, it's actually not that complex. If you just imagine a weather balloon going up and tracking as to what the conditions are around it, as well as where it is going. So like, is it moving north? Is it moving east? Is it moving south? Like, as it continues to move up into the sky. So we'll take a look at the photograph, and this right here is just showing where the weather balloon would be moving if it was to be lifted. So you can see it starts out by going north, and then it curls off to the right and kind of just veers off towards the right. And this this mode right here, where it curls off to the right, shows that there could be a bit of spin in the atmosphere, and that tells me that there could quite possibly be some tornadic conditions that could be brewing with this event. So the photograph checks off as a tornadic sounding, and you may not be able to see this. I'll zoom down a bit, but it actually confirms as a possible hazard type as a PDS tornado. So PDS stands for particularly dangerous situation. So something to keep in mind with all of that. The Cape numbers actually aren't too bad, surprisingly. Up to 2,685 joules per kilogram. The southernmost slot and the capping inversion is non-existent, so there is no limiting factor here. The elapse rates, this just determines your updrafts as to how strong they would be so that they can hold up hail and maybe tornadoes, but it's more or less a hail parameter. You would typically want them around a 7, so the surface to 3 kilometer up at ground level lapse rate is 7.8, which is near 8, not 7. And then the 3 to 6 kilometer at ground level lapse rates is a 6.8, which is closer to 7. So that's actually not bad. You can definitely see some larger amounts of hail. And speaking of larger amounts of hail, you can see a bit of a dry spike here. This actually can prove right here that whenever you see a dry spike, if water gets to a specific spot and it is relatively dry, you can get these larger amounts of hail and not multiple amounts of hail. And a bit more sporadic, because if you have the dry air, it picks up the dust. It's not watered down by all water. So you could have larger amounts of hail, and you could have more quantities amounts of hail up with these storms. So something to keep in mind with that. K-index, usually you want something around 30, so the fact that K equals to 38, that tells me that there could be more thunderstorms that could be pushing off. The K-index is basically like a probability for thunderstorms to develop, except it's not really a probability. It's just the greater the number of the K-index there is, the higher likelihood that storms could form. But it's not a probability, surprisingly. And then for you weather nerds, just by looking at the level of free convection and the low cloud level, it is relatively low, which means that these storms are not elevated. So that means that you could actually have some storms that could actually fire off and produce tornadoes. One last thing by looking at the sounding is the helicity. And helicity is the strength of the winds at the surface all the way to a specific spot in the atmosphere where inflow can actually seep into the thunderstorm. So typically you would want helicity to be around 200 M2S2 to be considered as tornadic, and it is double that. It is 401. So that is really something to keep in mind there, as well as surface to 1 kilometer is 287. And the reason why surface to 1 kilometer is so important is because typically your inflow carries moisture, and it tends to be a bit more moist as you get towards the surface. So if you can determine as to if the vorticity or the strength of the helicity is stronger even towards the surface, then you might have a bit more of a higher likelihood of producing tornadoes in and along these thunderstorms as well. So something to keep in mind with that. So yeah, overall, just by looking at the sounding, if you were to tell me to give you a brief explanation as to what this sounding is telling you. Is that it is a tornadic sounding that is indicative with its hodograph, as well as a lot of moisture here, and could potentially produce very large amounts of hail, as well as some just a slight bit of gusty winds, but definitely large hail and potentially tornadoes. We'll continue to move on through later on in the evening, take another sounding a bit later. So this will be 6 o'clock. And same thing. It's forecasted to be almost 3,000 joules per kilogram. It's actually 2,888 joules per kilogram. Capping inversion is a bit there, a little bit closer. But the dew points are still the low 60s, so that's something to keep in mind too. The lapse rates are all at around a 7, so that is something to keep in mind. The helicity actually is increased from the past couple of hours. So instead of it being 400, it is now 500. So that's something to keep in mind there. The hodograph is a lot larger than it once was, which means that this the tornadic threat could increase as it gets closer to the evening sunset hours. So something to keep in mind for any people who could be chasing out there, that people need to monitor the time of day as to what all could be happening there. Storm relative helicity is for a surface to 1 kilometer is 390 M2S2, so that actually has increased tremendously as well, meaning that there could be a bit more vorticity towards the surface, so something to keep in mind with that. Level of free convection is a bit high, but at the same time it's not too high, so there very well could be some storms, and it is contaminated just slightly. So contamination basically means that if it has a little bit, if I take a sounding like right into rain, it'll tend to mess up the parameters just a bit, so that not every parameter would exactly be correct. Not that these models are correct anyways, they're just educated guesses, but still something to keep in mind with all of that, that there could potentially be a elevated tornado risk as it continues to move off through later on in the evening here. Take another sounding, one last sounding real quickly. Yep, so the helicity actually increases later on in the evening, as well as the CAPE increases because of advection. So you'll actually get warm moisture from the Gulf of Mexico that actually seeps up due to the warm front that'll be in Kansas. So the moisture that'll be seeping up into this general vicinity, you'll have your wind shear from your low pressure system, which I'll show you all in a second. And that right in the middle, right where the warm and cold front actually meets, is where you can get your chances for tornadoes. So that's something to keep in mind there. But we'll quickly go over to wind shear and discuss as to how strong the wind shear is. We'll look at 500 millibar height, which is a specific height in the sky. It that's around 6 kilometers, give or take. So something to keep in mind with that. But if you just imagine, bear with me real quickly. So you'll have your warm front, which would be over here. Terrible drawing of a warm front. And your warm front brings up some warm Gulf moist air that'll be able to advect. Advect just means moisture moving in a specific direction. So it advects north into the general warned area, the watch area, I should say. And then you have your cold front that is down behind. You also have a dry line, a very steep dry line here today that actually is a way for you to be able to initiate thunderstorms. So it's more or less kind of a guarantee that you'll have thunderstorms, whether it is a gusty wind threat or a tornadic threat that is yet to be seen. But as it continues to move on through, you do have a dry line in place. So that's something to definitely keep in mind there. But your cold front pushes on through your warm, moist air, and your wind shear in this case actually is around 80 knots in some instances. Maybe even, so 70 knots, maybe even 80 knots in some spots, which is around 80 to 90, maybe even 95 miles per hour. So that is something to keep in mind too, that the wind shear in place is relatively strong. The low level jet, real quickly, I'll take a look. This actually gives it a bit of an extra kick in these thunderstorms, and it allows it to rotate a lot more. And you can see there is indeed a low level jet that is kind of just contradicting, not really contradicting actually. It is more or less moving in an opposite direction of where the wind shear would be going, which the wind shear is moving to the north and east. I'll put the black line here, so to the north and east. And this low-level jet is moving to almost due north, so you can have that general spin in the atmosphere, and that exactly is what we were seeing on the photograph. So this is the 850 millibar height, which, if I remember correctly, is around in between 1 and 3 kilometers. No, it's around 1 kilometers up in the sky. So that's something to keep in mind too, that this low-level jet, which could be bringing in moisture, will be screaming, absolutely screaming here. You can see in some instances it gets up to 32 knots. Usually, in order to consider thunderstorms, you would want around 20 to 25 knots. So the fact that it is up into the 30s, maybe even 40s as you go further up north, is pretty remarkable to me. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. And actually, it seems as if the low-level jet intensifies with time overnight. You can actually see it gets over to 51 knots at around 6 o'clock. So the low-level jet is forecasted to intensify overnight, and that could, as I mentioned before, bring a larger tornado risk later on to the sunset hours. I want to take a look real quickly at some of the other models, see if it's it's agreeing. So we'll take a look at the NAM 3K real quickly. We'll go over to the significant tornado parameter just to see some of the conditions over here. And indeed, it is agreeing with us that there is a bit... I can't see the sounding. That's stupid. Let's take a look at the wrap then. The rapid refresh model, which is something that we use frequently on our live streams. So real quickly, I'll take a sounding here for the wrap. And oh yeah, there's a lot of cape. It's forecasted to be 3,000. The wind shear isn't as strong according to the wrap. So that's something to keep in mind too. What if I take a sounding right here? Okay, never mind. So if it's a bit further out in front of the line, then yes, there is pretty nice wind shear. So if there's any sort of supercells that can catch on that, then it very well could be strong. And it could continue to sustain as it continues to move along. I want to take a look at the NAM real quickly. The NAM to see if there's any, if this is agreeing. So we'll move up here and take a sounding right there. And because the NAM is a tri-hourly model, so every frame is 3 hours, it can't accurately depict, similar to the NAM and the HRRR, as well as the rapid refresh model or the RAP. So, but it still shows that wind shear is a factor, and that you can still have the general curling motion in the atmosphere. So there's still spin in the atmosphere. There's still cape around in here, and there's still a bit of helicity. So regardless, there is a tornadic threat, whether it's strong or not. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me. If you guys did like the video, please be sure to leave a like. That helps me out so that it gets put on YouTube's algorithm and tells people that people like this video. And so it gets put on people's feeds, recommended feeds. And that's similar to how live streams work. So if you like the video, this video can get out to more people, and more people can be advised as to what could be happening, what could be transpiring later on this afternoon, here on Saturday, March 13th, 2021. So please like the video, subscribe if you are new, hit notifications. I do analysis like this every single day, and I do severe weather live streams on the days of severe weather. So if you want to come out and hang out so that we can talk about severe weather and discuss tornadoes and where it could impact, as well as warn the general public, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I will be live streaming more or less later on in the afternoon, actually the early afternoon hours, most likely at around 1:30 Central Standard Time. So something to keep in mind with that's the target date as to when I would want to stream, but we'll have to see as it continues to get closer. and then share this with friends and family on social media. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.